Hello, my name is Caroline Musin Berkowitz, and my favorite thing is talking about Passover.
Welcome to the Finding Favorites podcast, where we explore your favorite things without using an algorithm. Here's your host, Leah Jones.
Hello and welcome to a special repeat episode of Finding Favorites. I'm your host, Leah Jones, and this week I am republishing my 2022 interview with Caroline Musin Berkowitz. Caroline is a good friend and the person who loves preparing for Passover most in my life. And we are 1 week out from the first night seder, which means if you're like me, you're starting to think, oh gosh, I need to go buy everything for my flourless chocolate cake that I am bringing to Passover seder. I need to move my pasta to the garage. I need to start working. I am thinking like I need to start getting ready for Passover. Caroline, I know, she's down to like one bag of flour, and she'll be ready to kosher her stove in a few days. But it just seemed like a great time to republish this really fun, useful episode about Passover. I'm curious what Haggadah folks are using this year. My friend Jacob Kupietzky co-authored a new Haggadah. I will link to it in the show notes, about the roles of Jews in the forming of America and the story of liberation in the United States. It's a nice accompaniment to whatever Haggadah you're using this year. I'm sure also many of us will be finding ways to recognize the hostages that are still being held in Gaza, and the terrible famine impacting Palestinians, the recent attack by Iran on Israel. It has just been a really hard time it's just been hard. This last 6 months since October 7th, I think, have certainly been the saddest of my life since I joined the Jewish people, the hardest to comprehend. And so I guess when things are hard to comprehend, it's nice to have order. And Passover is that. Passover is a holiday that gives us order, time for reflection, time to be with our people and have big conversations. So with that, wear your mask, wash your hands, get your booster, and keep enjoying your favorite things. Hello and welcome to Finding Favorites, the podcast where we learn about people's favorite things and get recommendations without using an algorithm. Tonight, I am talking to, I think officially, one of the very first fans of Finding Favorites, who has, we've been trying to find a topic and a time for the last 100 episodes when Caroline would come on and talk. And now that we are 2 weeks out from Pesach, from Passover, a Jewish holiday that happens every spring, she sent me a text and said, all right, let's talk Passover. So this week I am joined by Caroline Musin Berkowitz. Caroline, how are you doing tonight?
I'm pretty good. Pretty good.
I'm so happy you're here.
It is, I feel like I talk to you all the time, but the truth is I'm just listening to you talk to other people.
Right.
So it's fun to actually talk to you.
I know. And it's been a long pandemic without getting to come and sit at your wonderful Shabbat table.
That is true. Hopefully we can change that soon.
Yes. Yeah. So we were figuring out a time tonight to record, and we were timing it around your challah baking. Now the episode that I recorded last week, we talked about baking challah, and I was obsessed with learning how to bake challah when I first converted to Judaism. But I didn't know anything about gluten and that like, and the positive things you need to know about gluten, and like, you have to knead the dough beyond it being just sticky. Like, I didn't know anything. So I'd have these like stregonona, huge loaves of challah that would like collapse in the oven. But you were saying, tell me about your challah recipe. It's a perfect appetizer to talking about Passover, Pesach or Passover, is to talk about challah, which is bread.
So first of all, I will say the best way to make sure that your dough is kneaded the right amount is to use a bread machine.
Oh.
I highly recommend. I make challah every Thursday night, and I would not make it if I had to use my hands and like do the dirty work. I spend 3 minutes putting in ingredients, and I turn on the dough cycle, and when it beeps, I come back and I braid.
That's brilliant.
I mean,
my mind is blown.
It people say, "Oh, how do you do this every week?" And I'm like, "Oh, it's just part of my routine." But like, it's 3 minutes, and then it's like 5 or 6 minutes of braiding, and then I put it in the oven.
What time do you put the dough in? Like, how long is the dough cycle?
I think the dough cycle is a little more than an hour and a half.
Okay.
I'm going to be honest. I used to know, but I have a different bread machine now, and I have no idea. But I will tell you that tonight I put the dough in right before eating dinner, and I was braiding. So that was probably around 6:15.
Okay.
And I was braiding right before 8 o'clock.
All right.
So it's maybe an hour 30, hour 40. And that dough cycle, like it mixes it up, and then it counts the rising time in as part of that time. So how did I get this recipe?
Yes.
So I've been making challah for many years, maybe like 8, 9, 10 years. And when I got married, my cousin, as a shower gift, gave us a bread machine with a wonderful recipe. And I tried it once, and it didn't work because I didn't know how the bread machine worked. So I gave up for a while. I should try her recipe again. And I tried different recipes, found something that I liked. And a few years ago, I went to Atlanta to visit my friend Cindy. And I said to her, "Do you want me to bring challah for the weekend?" And she said, "I've gotten pretty good at making it. You don't need to bring challah. I'll have it." So I was there over the weekend. I was there for Shabbat, and we're having her challah. And I'm kind of a challah snob. Like, I won't buy challah from the grocery store. I think that it's terrible. And I was eating hers, and I said, "Cindy, this challah is as good as mine." And then I said, "This challah is better than mine." So I came back to Chicago a couple days later, and I have been making her recipe ever since. So she has, as she said to me, as I was braiding tonight, we were FaceTiming and I was braiding, she said that when people ask her about it, she said it's an old family recipe called the internet. So if you go to allrecipes.com and you look up bread machine challah 2.
The number 2.
Yes.
Yeah. That's the good one.
That's the good one. I mean, I'm sure the other ones are good too, but I haven't tried them.
Huh. And it's all right. I could, because I loved, so also when I make challah, I have like whatever the first recipe was that I found and like a guide to living Jewishly. And it is like, you make the dough, it rises, you punch it, rises for 2 hours, you punch it down, it rises another hour. You punch it, you braid it, it rises 2 more hours. So it's 5 hours before you even get it in the oven.
I mean, nobody has time for that.
Nobody has time for that. I was single and in my 20s, so I would do that on Thursday night. And then on Friday morning, I would put the challah in the oven. I'd let it rise overnight in the fridge, braid it. And then Friday morning when I took my shower, I would put the challah in the oven.
Oh, that sounds fantastic.
That was pretty great.
That sounds very good.
Yeah. But eventually 5 hours of like rise time just got to be just too much.
I completely hear that.
Yeah.
I would say, so if I started around 6 o'clock-ish, I don't really know. Today was a weird day for me. If I started around 6 o'clock-ish, and at 8:30 it came out of the oven, so that's
amazing.
2.5 hours total, with very little hands-on time.
Right. Right. So you're also not like getting out of your nails, you're not doing this.
Right. I'm
trying
not
to get the
doing
dough
that
off
at
your
all.
hands.
Right. And when you're braiding it, it's already like together enough
Mm-hmm.
that it doesn't make your hands gross.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good. I will link to that in the show notes.
Excellent.
Yes. How is your? I mean, it's Chicago. It snowed today-ish. Snowed-ish.
Yeah.
It was frozen. It came from the sky.
Yes.
It's
Wild.
How was your spring winter? How's your winter going? Ending.
You know, I'm looking forward to wearing different shoes since I feel like I've been wearing the same shoes for the last 6 months. I feel like there were a few days when I could go outside in a sweatshirt jacket.
Yep.
And that was pretty fab. But I feel like these weird springs and the crazy winters are just the price we pay for Chicago summer.
Yes, I agree. On Tuesday, I dressed for... I guess I dressed for Monday's weather, or I dressed for like the week before's weather. I went to work in like Birkenstocks and a light hoodie. I did not wear a jacket. It was not appropriate. And my coworkers, we went out for dinner that night, and they were like, Leah, go into the company store, get a coat. You're like, we can't stand to look at you going out into the weather like this. And I was just like, I couldn't wear my boots another day. I was just over it. I needed a break from those heavy, heavy shoes.
So I have these, unlike many people, I do not have a lot of pairs of shoes.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's just never been my thing. So I have this great pair of shoes that I wore all of last summer. And they're like spring shoes, fall shoes, whatever. And I can only find one of them.
Uh-oh.
So I'm not really motivated to go through the piles of shoes by our front door. But I'm pretty sure the other one is there. And if I want to wear shoes that don't look like Uggs, I might have to find it.
Yeah. Yeah, but the way the weather's going, you've got time.
I do.
To find the other shoe.
I do. It'll be fine.
Yeah.
It'll work.
So I want to get into it because you sent me this outstanding outline. So things that I know about you are that when it comes to shopping for Passover or recommending podcasts, you are the most organized person in my life. I think Excel spreadsheets might be your love language.
I think that's probably true. I do want to say before we get into this that I've been prepping for Passover for many, many years, like each year, not continuously. And it is the single most organized part of my life. But I am not like this for like the rest of the year and for other holidays.
Okay.
And if I could be this organized with the recipes and the lists and the shopping, like it'd be really amazing, but I'd probably implode.
Yeah. It's a lot. It is a lot.
It's a lot. It's a lot of work, but it's fun. Like it's just so different from the rest of the year, and so I really do like it. I don't like the week before Passover, but I really like Passover.
Yeah. Let's start, because everyone who listens isn't Jewish, with how do you explain Passover or Pesach? We'll probably go back and forth with Hebrew and English, and we'll make sure to define it. But when you have someone who's a non-Jewish colleague or person who's like, what is this holiday all about? Like, what's your on one foot explanation?
I would say it's the core people-making experience of Judaism, Jewish religion, and Jewish people. The story of leaving Egypt, from being enslaved under Pharaoh to going out to be a free people, It's an incredible story, like from a literature perspective. It's an incredible story from a religious and spiritual perspective. But what I really like about the holiday is that, unlike so many other Jewish holidays that involve certain things going on in the synagogue, and Passover does too. And my family, we're active synagogue members. What I like about Pesach, about Passover, is that it takes place so much at home, and it takes place around a dinner table. And as someone who, Excel spreadsheets might be my love language, but I think that feeding people is also my love language. And so I love it. I love being creative, and there are dietary restrictions associated with the holiday, such that we do not eat bread products. And there are so many ways that people live Jewishly, that some people don't eat bread. Some people don't eat any bread products. Some people also add a group of foods called kitniot, or roughly legumes, like corn and peas and green beans and rice. And some do eat those. And there are just lots of different ways to experience the holiday. And I like that the way we serve food speaks about who we are as people, individually and as families. I have so many memories of seders, the special ritualized holiday meal on the first two nights, from my childhood, with grandparents who are no longer here and other relatives who are no longer here. And also memories of like making my own seder memories as an adult. And having, I don't know, it's interesting. You know, I always knew at one family, we had these friends who used to live in our neighborhood in Lakeview, and we had seders with them, and I always knew that we had chicken Marbella at the first night seder. Like that was just, like, I've never made this dish.
I've never heard of this dish.
It's like chicken and plums, and it's cooked on the stove. I don't really know what it is. It's really good.
I think I have had this dish. Now that you describe it, yeah.
It's really good. You know, it's just like, oh, what's that food that people had the first time they went to a seder, and what's that thing that someone always makes, whether it's maybe, I don't know, someone introduced me to this thing that's called Matzah crack or Matzah Toffee, where you melt like butter and brown sugar, and you put it on top, and you put chocolate chips on top and smear it around, and it's very good. You can also make it with saltines.
Yes.
When it's not Passover. Probably just as good.
It's like a brittle layered on top of matzah. Like almost like peanut brittle, chocolate brittle layered on top of matzah.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's a toffee. It's delicious.
It is delicious.
Yes.
So I like the different food traditions that people bring. And one of the things that I've really enjoyed over the years is having people meeting people at a seder, having people at our home for a seder, and learning about the traditions that they bring. It's so interesting to see and to think about having a communal experience around your own table.
Yeah. I really have come to love Passover because I love the tradition in the diaspora, so outside of the state of Israel, that when it's like a festive holiday, it's 2 days, with the exception of Purim. And so I'm like, guess it would be so fun to have like Erev Thanksgiving dinner and Thanksgiving dinner. Like, I personally love that you can go to 2 seders and you can have like one with your family and one with this set of friends, or seder hopping on. I typically host a second night seder. This year I'm not because of the cancer and trying to be realistic about like how long I can stand.
Sure. It's important to be realistic about that for a seder.
Yes. Because I will walk more on like a seder prep day than like for the months leading up to it, because you're getting your house ready, you're cooking, you're dragging chairs around if you're me. But I love that it's 2 nights around the dinner table. They might both be at your home. They might both be out. There's a wonderful tradition of welcoming the stranger. So a lot of times you'll have someone, or like I will often have like a friend of a friend of a friend who I've never met. Like I love having people I've never met before at my seder. That to me feels like, I did my job. Like there's someone I don't know.
And that person brings good stories.
Yes.
And brings good experiences and adds to the flavor.
Yeah.
Of the evening. It's really, it's a special thing. I've been in this neighborhood for, 17 years. And I remember walking home from seders, maybe walking half a mile home to wherever we were living, and seeing other windows where there are people sitting around a table.
Yeah.
And it's so moving for me to think there are all these people having this experience at the same time.
Yeah. And it's also the most observed of any Jewish holidays.
That is true.
In part because it's at home, it's a meal, and whether somebody's doing a very abbreviated seder, telling the story rapidly, or having a long, lingering storytelling night, or it is the most observed, which I think is fascinating.
They're still coming together.
Yeah. So I'm going to pull up your email quickly, because you have so many ways of thinking about it. But we talked about seder growing up, but can we time travel to the first seder that you were responsible for the menu?
I would say when I was in college, I had friends and we all sort of did a seder together.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember very little of it, except that it was wonderful. I don't remember if I led seders at Hillel, at the Jewish student organization on campus. I don't remember.
Yeah.
I might have. But I remember doing this with my friends my senior year, and that was fun.
Yeah. What does it mean to make Passover? You've said this is the 19th year that you're going to make Passover. What does that mean for you?
So to me, that means being responsible for preparing the food that I'm going to eat.
Okay.
So when I was in college, I went to the University of Iowa, and the Hillel, the Jewish student organization, had a Passover meal plan. And unlike many larger universities, I'm learning, there was not a kosher meal plan through the dorms, but like in general. But
right.
During Passover, Hillel had a meal plan, so you could pay whatever amount of money, and you could eat your lunches and dinners at Hillel that week, so you could have kosher for Passover food.
Mm-hmm.
So, I was a kid. I was in high school before college, so I didn't worry about making food.
Right.
And I went to school, and I paid the money and showed up, and they had the food.
Yep.
And I didn't really have to think about it. And my first year out of college, I was living in Skokie,
mm-hmm.
and I was working at a synagogue, and I remember thinking, well, this won't be too hard because, it's not hard to do Passover. I've been doing this my whole life.
Right. And you're in, a very Jewish suburb. What could be hard about keeping Passover in Skokie?
Well, it turns out that if you're not going to a place that makes you food every day,
mm-hmm.
I got a little hungry. I mean, that's the truth. I got a little hungry,
yep.
And on the third or fourth day of the holiday, I must have gone to Target or Bed Bath & Beyond, and I bought a griddle, and I started making matzah brei. I started frying matzah with egg. And that was, I would not call that necessarily making Pesach, but
mm-hmm.
that was the beginning of me being an adult and figuring it out. And so a few years later, I was in grad school in Boston, and I lived with two wonderful, wonderful roommates, and both of whom were Jewish.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, naively. So I was in graduate school at Brandeis, so we had all of Passover off for spring break, and they were both working. And I said, if we can agree to keep our kitchen in our apartment strictly kosher for Passover, I will cook everything for the whole week.
What were you Now at this point, were you like someone who like cooked family style meals for your roommates, or you were just like, this is the first time you're thinking about cooking the food for the whole suite?
I think I was a control freak.
Okay. All right. Fair enough.
And they said, sure.
Yeah.
And then what I learned, again, remember I said I was naive, I learned that you can say strictly kosher for Passover, and every person is going to hear that differently.
Yes.
And so that was a great learning opportunity for me, for all of us. And I lived with them for 2 years while I was in Boston. And the next year was a little different. And I still was willing to cook for the whole week. But we sort of changed our parameters a little bit so that we could live together well. But we hosted seders there and just had a blast with all these other 20-something single people. We had this huge living room, we basically like our living room, dining room space, and we filled it up and we sang until late into the night. And so I would say that's what I would call my first year of my first years of making Pesach. When I came back here to Chicago, I was single, and I was like, oh well, I have to, and I didn't. Sorry, not only was I single, I was also living alone. That's what I meant to say. And so I just sort of figure it out before I was part of a synagogue community and before I really knew people. And so I made plans for a week of meals, assuming, I don't want to say, it sounds sad to say, assuming that I would not get invited to any meals, but it was more like, I want to take care of myself.
Right.
Like, I'm responsible for myself. So if I do get invited to meals, that's amazing. And if I don't,
you're not starving.
Right.
Because there are only so many days when cream cheese on matzah covers it. Correct.
And as someone who doesn't eat cream cheese, not even then.
Yeah. Keep going, cowboy.
So I would start to like make menus and figure things out, and I started to invite people over for meals, and I also got invited to people's homes for meals. And that's how I started coming up with like a whole plan.
Yeah.
My plan started with a clipboard, and on the clipboard I would make lists of recipes. Well, first of all, I discovered this amazing thing. I don't think I do have it. Hang on. I know it's a podcast so no one else can see it.
We will discuss it.
So this is the CRC kosher certification Pesach guide that comes out every year.
Okay.
And it has everything you want to know and don't want to know about this holiday. But the best part is they have this section in the middle called the shopping guide. And the shopping guide is color-coded.
Oh, look at that.
So the things that are green, I can send you the link for this, by the way.
Yeah.
The things that are green, you do not need to have Passover certification.
Okay. So those are things that you don't have to, because one of the things you do is you eat down your pantry.
Yes,
so this means there are some things that you don't have to get rid of and swap out for Passover.
So I swap it out anyway.
Okay.
But it means that you don't need to get... So...
that it doesn't have to have, like...
It doesn't need to have a Passover kosher symbol on it.
Got it. I understand.
So, for example, you can buy white sugar, like any white sugar. It's totally fine. So, because my family is strictly kosher for Passover, or one iteration of strictly kosher for Passover, let's be fair, I do buy new things.
Okay.
And I am eating down the pantry as a way of making, we have a very tiny kitchen and a large pantry, so I'm trying to make space for stuff now. But, so this shopping guide shows things that you need. The green listed items do not need any Passover certification. So that also includes things like raw fruit.
Sure.
Or like kosher meat that doesn't have anything added to it. Then there's it's like a stoplight. There's the yellow section. It has to have reliable Passover kosher certification on it.
Okay.
And then there's the reddish, orangish section that's like, no, don't buy this.
There's no way it could be kosher for Passover, so don't go.
Exactly.
Okay.
So I used to take this shopping guide and I put it on a clipboard and I would walk through the aisles of Jewel with my list and with this as my guide so I could check it. And I kept this clipboard from year to year and I kept my menus from year to year. And at some point, I started putting them into a Google spreadsheet. Lots of people have trouble figuring out what to serve and what to buy.
Right.
And it's so tempting to go to Jewel and just walk down the aisle and be like, oh, this looks good. This looks great. But this food is so expensive.
Yes.
And right now, all the prices on food are going way up even more so.
Right.
So I like to go in with a plan because this can be an expensive week of eating. It is an expensive week of eating. So what I do is, what I recommend doing is make a list of food you want to eat. Go through cookbooks or the internet or that email that you filed away. And write down all of the recipes that look good. And also mark where you got them, because you're not going to remember where you got them. Which might also include, this is on page 94 of this cookbook.
Right.
Do future you a favor. I always like to do future me a favor. And then you look at those recipes, and it's time to be realistic and say, I have 13 different desserts on my menu, and I probably don't need them all.
You probably just need 12.
Right. I mean, to be fair, the 13 ones, that is a true number. The 13 ones I have right now are for the whole week, not just for the seder.
Right.
But also, I should probably cut it down to like half of that. So then you get
and double the recipes.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. Double the servings, halve the recipes.
So you get to be so then you get to be realistic and say, what will I really make? And what I did originally was I took each of these recipes I decided I would make, and I wrote down the ingredients. Originally probably on paper. Yeah. Before Google spreadsheets. And I would write down specifics. Eventually, and then I would put everything together to decide, well, it looks like I'm going to need 63 eggs. So that I would know what to buy.
Yeah.
Now it's in a spreadsheet, so I just adjust and it's in a spreadsheet, and I use almost the same recipes every year. I just sort of move them around by day.
Yeah.
So it shows me, I know how many cups of sugar I'm going to need, so I know if I need to buy, I don't need to buy more than a 5-pound bag, but if I needed to, I could. It would tell me, and it does tell me how many eggs, and I have found that if I stick to the recipes, if I stick to the plans, which is a hard thing to do, but if I stick to it, it's pretty good estimation of what we need.
Yeah.
And if you only buy the things that you need, then that makes it easier. So I feel like, honestly, that's a good thing for holiday planning in general. I feel like a lot of what I plan for the way that I plan for Passover could be used for other holidays. Do you know about Dana K. White and A Slob Comes Clean?
Yes, I do.
So I love her.
Yeah.
Her decluttering methods have changed my life.
She's the one that is like when you start her program, isn't it like when you go to bed, your kitchen sink should be clean?
Oh, that's Fly Lady. That's a different
Fly Lady. Okay, but I know my sister talks about A Slob Comes Clean also. So
A Slob Comes Clean, her big things are when you're like, if you're going through stuff, lots of people put things into piles, like take this to the bathroom, whatever. She says, no, you have to take it there right away. And it seems inefficient, but you're going to run out of steam.
Right.
And then you're going to have all these piles to put away. So if you just put things away one at a time, then you have less to do.
Yes.
So I have gone through all of her podcasts and she has several about Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
And I found them to be very interesting because she talked about having a whole other set of dishes and decorations and changes the way her house is run. And I was like, Christmas is not my holiday. I don't celebrate this holiday.
Right.
But what she's saying, I can apply it to Pesach.
Absolutely,
Because
yeah.
it is the same skill set. So I will tell you that what I try to do about 6 weeks before Pesach, and I try to do it at some other point in the year too, is we try to eat down the pantry.
Mm-hmm.
And we go through, it's a fun activity with my kids. We go through the pantry, we go through our chest freezer and our regular freezer, and we make lists of all the food that we have. And then we systematically work on eating it so that we're about to spend a lot of money on food for 1 week.
Mm-hmm.
We might as well use the money we've already spent on the food in our freezers.
Yeah.
So we've actually done a really good job this year. We're getting there.
Yeah. Does it help that the kids are eating a little bit more? Like they grow every year.
Yeah, it does. It also helps that I found 3 different kinds of cookies in the freezer.
Aha. Fantastic.
So we had to take them out. I took out brownies for last weekend. I was like, oh, these are in here. We have to eat them.
Mm-hmm.
I think
Those are the rules.
I think we have 2 wedges of cake left, so I should probably take one of those out tonight.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's a good way to start. And then I just, I like the food prep part. I really, really enjoy creating things that have been in my family for a long time, or that I have taken in as recipes that we make. I will say a great thing for me with my spreadsheet is that I do a post-mortem every year.
Wow.
And so I remember one year I had some cookie recipe, and I wrote, don't make this recipe. You know you want to. You'll think it's going to be good. I don't know what this recipe was, but it was some kind of cookie. And it spread. It was like a sheet of cookie, and not in a good way, across.
Oh, no.
And I did it 2 years in a row, and I was like, never again.
Mm-hmm.
But I made notes. So I just want to see. I have a note from, this is from, I don't know if this is from last year. It says 2020. Could have been from last year, even though it says 2 years ago. It says, make more roasted veggies. Don't have 2 different salmon recipes back to back. Just like this, don't buy this one thing. It didn't taste good.
Mm-hmm.
So that's helpful, because
Right.
I'm not going to remember it. So I just feel like being organized in this way makes the holiday better, makes the holiday easier. So we all know what to expect.
Yeah. Man, I think a lot about what's going to be on the seder table. And then I'm doing matzah and cream cheese. I do eat kidney oat, so like quinoa and rice.
Mm-hmm.
At some point I'll be like, well, a tortilla is basically Mexican matzah. So at some point I go out for Mexican because, like, when I get corn tortillas, so because I don't plan at all for the holiday, or I buy things that I'm like I've seen people make matzo brie, and I know it's like Passover chilaquiles, right? It's eggs.
What are chilaquiles?
Tortilla chips and eggs fried in a pan.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, with like salsa.
I mean, that sounds great with salsa.
Yeah.
I would say, I love matzo brie, and I could make it every day.
Mm-hmm.
The trick is you want to hold the matzah, you want to hold a sheet of matzah under running water for like to the count of 20.
Okay.
You want to get it good and wet, and then I put it in a bowl and kind of like smash it down, and then I scramble the egg with it, like in that bowl. And I put
my matzo brie is always very crunchy.
I do. Well, it depends on how long you soak it, because it's good to have a little bit of crunch.
I never knew to soak it at all.
Yeah,
so you're changing my life.
it's a, if you'd like to come for Matzah Brai, you're welcome to come.
Ooh.
We will be here.
Yeah.
I find that it can be hard to plan meals for the holiday because I think a lot of people get tired of matzah.
Right.
And so what we try to do is have a lot of protein and a lot of produce. And have like food that is just real food.
Right. Like that it's not all Passover substitute cake, Passover
Correct.
substitute bread.
Like I don't make matzah like cakes.
Yeah.
Because I don't cook with breadcrumbs, so I don't want to cook with matzah meat.
crumbs. Yeah.
So like we do for dessert the first night, like the first seder is chocolate covered strawberries. Because by that point people are usually full. So it's just like a nice, fun, refreshing thing. And like you melt chocolate chips and you dip in strawberries.
Yeah.
And, they taste good. So
I've done that for during the seder. We've dipped strawberries in chocolate for dipping.
Oh, this is the best thing that I discovered at a seder several years ago. It is the Karpas course.
Yes.
So Karpas is the second, third, fifth. It's very early on in the seder. I think it's second or third part. And you dip a vegetable into salt water because the vegetable represents spring and the salt water represents the tears of slavery. And so many people will dip some parsley and they're like, oh, it tastes like spring, or they see parsley the rest of the year, it tastes like Passover, but I went to the home of these friends of ours, and they had a whole course, and they had carrots, and they had cherry tomatoes, and they had Terra chips, and Terra chips?
Yeah, yeah.
So you can get some that are kosher for Passover.
Okay.
They are obscenely expensive.
Right.
But like it's fun because they're regular they're regular chips.
Yeah.
And you could like dice potatoes and roast them, and so put all of those out, and then as you're carrying on with the seder, if people need to have a little snack, it's right there. I highly recommend a Karpas course for anyone who, like me, gets hungry before dinner.
Right. Yeah, or if you've got some kiddos trying to hang on.
Yes,
it's
absolutely.
Really important.
Absolutely. Put out some guac there.
Yeah.
So we try to do foods like that, like foods that are fun, but foods that are simple. I make salmon for 1 or 2 nights. And I make a few different kinds of chicken. Just like regular chicken that I would make the rest of the year. Nothing too exciting about it. My daughter loves brisket, so we will definitely have brisket and probably be eating that through a good portion of the week.
Yeah. Cowboy, you are killing me.
Cowboy really wants to be on the podcast.
He really wants to be on the podcast.
It's so funny.
Yeah. This is, I've been out of the house for 3 days in a row, right? Like, this is him getting used to my new, like, our new going to the office schedule, is that by Thursday nights, he's like, I need cuddles, I need scritches, I need attention. Whereas when we were home for 2 years, he did not need this much attention because he, like, kept eyes on me, I guess, during the day.
It just wants to be sure.
I'm going to keep coming back. Don't worry, babe.
All good.
Yeah. So how do you recommend, like, if I were going to start, or if someone's going to start either observing for the whole week, it's like Passover's the most observed holiday because there's a dinner, but then lots of people maybe don't do the full week. Or people that listen to this and they're like, Caroline's really got it together. I want to take some steps towards that. How do you recommend people plan for the holiday?
I would recommend trying to be realistic about what you can handle, what your household can handle, and maybe pushing yourself a little bit beyond that, but not too much. And think about what works for you. Listen, I'm not a rabbinic authority. I'm not going to say this is a good thing. I'm going to talk about my experience. Yes. I don't want you to take it as this is how to do it. I would say that it's good to avoid bread products during the week. And if that's something, if someone's looking to increase their observance, to go beyond the nights of the seder or the night of the seder, for some families that do one, I think that's a great way to do it. I think that other people might go beyond bread products to like bread to bread, cereal, pasta, oats, etc. I think there are lots of ways to look at what people do. I think that I don't think that the way that my family observes the holiday is the only way or the best way. I think it's the right way for our family. Yeah. And there are lots of right ways. I think looking at I really think that making a meal plan, which when I do it in my non-Passover life, it seems to serve me well, which is not to say that I am lately very good about doing that. But making a meal plan helps you know what to expect during the week, know what to expect for groceries. And I think that unless you eat pasta every night, and no judgment, because my daughter would if we would let her. Right. I think there are lots of ways to eat in a Passover way. Yeah. I think there are lots of ways to do that. There are lots of ways to make choices when people go out to eat. I remember when I was in college, I was teaching Sunday school, and one kid said her family had gone to whatever restaurant and they had gotten burgers and had said no buns. Right. Yeah. And certainly in some areas of Chicago, there are places that have matzah. Probably Jack's and Benny's in Northbrook. Areas that are like Jewish type delis, kosher style delis, places with a larger Jewish community might have that. Might not have that in our areas of the city, but they do exist. I think that so in our family we change over our dishes and utensils. I think it's a very meaningful experience to do that. I would not advise that for someone who's dipping their toes into more Passover observance. I think these things come with time. Even what I did, it came with time as I evolved, and as I used to only use paper plates, and at some point I realized, I'm buying paper plates every year. I might as well buy plates. Right. And so I have these awesome Passover plates. They are melamine plates from Target, and they are striped. And those are the regular plates. And then I have little plates for like fish or for dessert or whatever. And those are polka dotted in coordinating colors.
Oh, that's so fun.
So that was like the spring line at Target in maybe 2010. Yeah. And I used plastic silverware for years. And at one point I went to IKEA and got their cheapest silverware because I was like, no, it's 1 week a year. It's fine. Right. I like opening the boxes of stuff because it's like, oh, these are my old friends I haven't seen in a year. Right.
And that's where it does, like, the advice about Christmas, because people have Christmas china, they have Christmas linens that they only bring out once a year. Like, that's where it becomes very similar.
It's true. And it's fun to look through those things. And it's, as my kids are getting older, and one of my kids is really interested in stuff in the kitchen and the other is not. But I think this might be a year to start telling stories about this is the thing that we got at, this point in time. We have 1 year so over the years, 1 year I got a food processor, 1 year I got a stand mixer that I keep with my Passover stuff. And the food processor has on it has frozen duct tape, like frozen Disney Frozen duct tape, like closing the box, because that's what we had that year.
Sure.
Close it. My daughter had a frozen birthday party when she was 3, and my mom sent all the decorations and also frozen branded duct tape. So we have that like on some of our Passover stuff. And I wrote on the tape closing the box, like, sharp implement at the top. And every year I'm like, thank you. Thank you,
a gift to future you.
Yes. So I think that finding those things, it's part of the holiday. For me, the most stressful part is that we scour the kitchen and we're like clean everything out to prepare to make it kosher for Passover. And that's the really hard work for me, because once that's done, then I can start to open the boxes.
Right.
Nothing gets open until then. And it's just fun to see. It's fun to look at the things that are in there. One year, okay, I know you think that I'm kind of ridiculously organized, but after many years of not doing this, one year I made a tab in my spreadsheet for the bins that I have.
Okay.
So that I know, and really that's very practical. Now I'm looking for it, and I, of course, can't find it on here. But I do have one that says, maybe it's on the checklist? I don't know. Now I don't see it.
Uh-oh.
I hope I didn't get rid of it. But it said, basically, like, this is in the, like, plates and bowls and silverware are in bin 1. And these, or there's one that says, like, open this one first.
Okay.
And I did that because every year I'd take everything out, and at the end of the holiday I'd have to put everything away. And I would have no idea how to put it, like how it was arranged. So one year I took pictures, and then I took the pictures and put them in the spreadsheet, like, and wrote up so I would know.
Nice.
Although it seems I can't find it, I guess I have to document it again this year.
Uh-oh.
But also that's a good thing for Christmas decorations. You have to know which ones fit into which bin, right?
Right.
Like you have to know where you hid away the china. I found a Facebook memory. So I write down in my postmortem, like, don't buy this. You have leftover that, whatever. So I found this in my Facebook memories in the last week, something that said, my spreadsheet says I have 100 plastic cups in my closet. Does anyone know where I put them in my closet? and I couldn't find them. I found them 3 weeks after the holiday.
Oh, no.
Like, I mean, it's silly. It's plastic cups. Like, it's
right.
not so expensive to get more. But, like, I kept
if you have 100 already.
If you have 100, you should not need to buy any more.
Right.
So it's an exercise in quasi-organization and living with chaos, which is what I do, and also not always my strong suit. But it's nice. Like, the holidays, I just, like, for me, I have the time off of work, and my kids have the time off of school.
Yeah.
And it's a nice time to just sort of step back.
Yeah.
And think about where we've been in the past. My son is 5.5 years old, and we were listening to a podcast this afternoon in which someone referred to doing seders on their own, like in 2020 and
right.
2021. And he said, well, we've never done seders that were just our family, have we? And I said, well, yes, the last 2 years we have. And my guess is, well, I think that before that year, he probably wasn't awake for much of the seder.
Right.
Because he was so little. But at this point, I will let my kids stay up as long as they want on those nights. The rule that we set with them is, when you are tired, you need to go to bed. We're not going to make, like, a whole thing of stopping what we're doing. You can choose when you're ready for bed. And I will tell you, they don't listen to the podcast, so I can say this.
Yes.
That I bought them a gift, not an afikoman gift. The afikoman is a point near the end of the seder that's designed to keep kids' interest, in which a piece of matzah is hidden by the leader of the seder, and kids go and look for it after dinner. It serves as the official ritual dessert, and they get a prize for finding it. So I do have some Afikoman prizes.
Ooh.
But this is not one of them. I ordered Matza Pajamas.
Oh my gosh. That'll be so fun.
It is so fun. It's made by this this rabbi in New York. Her business is called Midrash Manicures.
Yes.
She actually sells these decals. Like, you can buy 10 plague like nail decals. She has dreidel leggings. She's got all sorts of fun stuff.
Right.
But last year she made for her child these Matza Pajamas.
Yeah.
And they're like, you know, your long sleeve and pant pajamas, but they're kind of tan with like brown ridges for matzah.
Yeah.
So I'm super excited. I definitely want to recommend Midrash Manicures. Get your Matza Pajamas. So I have a recommendation to make.
Yes.
Another one. I was really thinking, like, what are the things that I could share here that would be useful? So the ritual of the seder is it's written in a book called the Haggadah, which literally means the telling, and there are lots of different Haggadahs that are out there for every stripe and flavor. Lots of options. Some people have a custom of getting a new one every year. And like, it's interesting to have, sometimes it's helpful to have everybody around the table on the same page, literally. So you can say, now we're on page 26. And sometimes it's really fun to have people on different pages.
In different books?
In different books, so that they can see what's in that book and say, oh, this is such an interesting piece of commentary, because the Seder is, you know, we're reading through the ritual text, but, you know, we're not widgets. Like, we have reactions to things or things that are interesting. So I bought a Haggadah a few years ago when it first came out, and I thought I was going to buy it for my daughter, who really likes comic books, because it is a graphic novel.
Ooh.
And I have to tell you, I thought I bought it for her, but actually it's for me.
Okay.
And I don't know if I should get more copies, because I do not want to relinquish it. Like, I want to use it at the Seder. So it is called the Passover Haggadah graphic novel.
Oh my gosh.
And the guy who put it together, who did the illustrations, I think, okay, I'm not a comic book person, so I don't know if it's DC or Marvel, but like, he drew Batman and like worked and did Batman stuff.
Wow.
So like, he kind of knows what he's doing.
Yeah.
And it's really beautiful. It has lots of pictures of women and men, which for me, very important to have representation. And there are pictures it's set up, it looks like a comic book. It has the Hebrew text on one side.
Yeah.
And it has comics on the other that go through, that literally are going through every word of the text, but showing modern things. Like, you have the, in the story of the 4 children, you have the wicked one, and it shows a picture of a kid, like, dropping his plate on the ground and being sent to his room, where he's kicking a basketball against the wall. There are pictures from Soviet Russia. There are pictures from antiquity that are all drawn. And I will say my favorite part, I had it open to this and then I lost it. There is an illustration that shows the Jewish people standing in the parting of the sea. And the way it's set up, it looks like a selfie. The guy at the front is holding up his iPhone and taking a selfie. And if you look closely at the picture, at the drawings of people in it, many of them are probably just like drawings.
Right.
But if you know Jewish figures, you will see in there Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sacks. You'll see David Ben-Gurion. You'll see Natan Sharansky. I'm sure there are famous women in here too. These are just the first ones I've seen.
Yeah.
There are many. Like, I would love to hear from the author. Like, who are all of the people who he put into here? But I love that he's saying. We say that everyone, the entire Jewish community, was standing at Sinai,
right,
where the Torah was given. People who were born Jewish, people who became Jewish later, we were all there.
Right.
And I feel like that's what the artist is really portraying in this splitting of the sea, with everyone standing there also. So this is my favorite page of this particular Haggadah. But
that's neat.
It's a really cool thing just to look through.
Yeah. I went to one seder many years ago. Actually, Facebook Memories just showed it to me today. Like whatever it was I said on my way to that seder. But it was early in my Jewish life, maybe like 4 or 5 years in, and it was a seder where everybody had a different Haggadah, and I did not have the literacy yet to not be on the same page as everyone. And it was so hard for me.
So hard.
But then this last year, when it was just, first night was just Ezra and I at the table, and we each had a different Haggadah, and he kind of guided, like first night he did, second night I led. But we did each have a different Haggadah, and I was like, oh my gosh, I've gotten to the place where I can have multiple Haggadot in front of me. I don't know. For me, it was like this proof, like the proof that I've, like, my Jewish literacy has grown to the place where I am now comfortable being at a table where we're using different books and we're sharing different readings. But boy, that first time I went to one, it was like the hosts were lovely and I could not escape. So I got through it, but I was so confused.
I went to a seder once. It was a lovely seder of extremely educated Jews. Mm-hmm. And I've been going to seders all of my life, but not necessarily with extremely educated Jews all of my life. And this family did something wonderful for the middle-ish part of the seder, the Magid part where you're telling the story. They said, we're going to leave the table, and we went to the living room and we sat on couches. Mm-hmm. So we were all reclining and we were all cozy and comfy until the point that we needed to come back to the table for that portion. And what the leader said was, you can read your, like, we went around in a circle, because I think, I don't know if everyone does that, but I think that everyone I know who goes to seders does that, where you go around and every person reads a paragraph, and then everyone gets to participate. And what the leader said was, you can read your section in English, in Hebrew, or in whatever language you choose. Mm-hmm. And that was fascinating as I sat and watched all of these incredibly educated people, and I definitely felt like, I'm just gonna read it in English.
Right.
It was very interesting, but people had cool commentary and things to share. I think when I was dating Neil, before we were married, we went to a seder of friends of his, and they had everyone tell the 4 questions in a different language, and they had a book that had them in dozens of languages. It's very interesting to see the different things that people put in and get people involved with.
Yeah.
Do you put anything additional on your seder plate?
I do like a clementine, which is for the inclusion of LGBTQ Jews in our community.
Right.
It has gotten kind of bastardized as it being about women, representation of women, and then people are like, no, it actually comes from this other place. And so I do a tangerine, and then I also include a reading that explains, like, you probably think it's for this, but it's really, this. And then I've been talking to some people that this year to put a sunflower on the Seder plate for Ukraine.
I have not seen that, but I've seen people say you should put olives on the Seder plate. Because olives are like a sign of peace, like olives, like in a dove's beak and all of that. This Seder that we went to with the 4 questions in dozens of languages, they also put potato peels on the Seder plate to represent the enslavement of Jews during the Holocaust and how they eat potato peels. And the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising took place on the first night of Passover. It began on the first night of Passover. And so I thought that was particularly interesting. There are all sorts of fascinating things that people do to add to the rituals, to make them their own. I think it's one of the really appealing parts of the holiday.
Yeah. And since I converted, and while like I am culturally, it's weird. Like, I'm single, so like culturally I didn't marry into a Jewish family to pick up minhag or traditions from them, but I'm not going to pretend like I'm pretty Ashkenazi in my traditions. Which is Eastern European based. But I do, there's like I think it's a Sephardic tradition, an Iraqi tradition maybe, of using green onions during Dayenu to represent like the whips of slavery. But then we just die laughing because we're all like trying to hit each other with green onions that are getting more and more wilted the louder and louder we sing Dayenu. So that is just like a hilarious addition that we've done some years where we're hitting each other with onions.
We had a guest one year, and I don't remember who it was, but I think his family was Sephardi. Maybe they were Egyptian. I don't remember. But he said they had a tradition that before the Seder started, each person, like, we'd go around the table, and each person would be asked. They'd sit like this as if they're holding a bag over their shoulder. It was Syrian. Thank you. It was Syrian, and people would say, "Where are you leaving?" And the person would say, "Egypt," or Mitzrayim, which is Hebrew for Egypt. And then they'd say, "Where are you going?" And they'd say, "Jerusalem." And it's sort of like...
What do you have? What is that in your hand?
And what did they say? Come over here so that you're closer to the microphone.
Tag team podcast.
Oh, yeah. And then
Hi.
The third question, which is, what is that on your shoulder? And
what did they say?
I think it was lachma anya or something.
Oh,
something about matzah, I think.
The poor man's bread that's at the very beginning of the Seder.
Freedom or something along those. I think it was something about the matzah is my recollection.
But it was so cool because we went around the table and each person was asked the same 3 questions, and each person answered the same way, and it sort of set the scene. Like, is it a dinner party? Is it a religious ritual, or is this a story of experience?
Right. That's so interesting. I love picking those things up through the years too, and folding them into your own experience. And I also use Haggadah.com every year, which is a website full of clips that people have uploaded their family clips. They've uploaded, organizations upload extra readings. And so I have one that I build on every year. And then because my friends are not strictly observant, I send them the PDF, and they can print it. They can bring an iPad. They can bring their phone.
Sure.
And so it's actually been really nice because we've gotten to a place where people we're not wasting as much paper like the way we used to. We used to print them out, would have the year on the front, and then I'd collect them and I would add them to my pile of things to take to the synagogue. But now, for the most part, people are doing Kindle, iPad, or like last year I just shared my screen. It was on Zoom. So I just had to make one, and I shared the screen. So that was nice.
So I was not raised observant to the level that I am right now.
Yeah.
And I remember one year in the 80s, my mom, we were kids in the 80s, we'll understand this, but this really dates us. My mom went somewhere and rented a camcorder. Okay? Mm-hmm. It's like the big camcorder that you're holding over your shoulder. And she wanted to record the seder.
Yeah.
So, that's cool. I don't know if she had in her mind that, the people sitting around the table wouldn't always be there. All of the people around the table lived another 25, 30 years, thank goodness.
Yeah.
But I just remember she asked, my Aunt Gloria had this recipe for gefilte fish, and she made it twice a year. She made it for Rosh Hashanah. She made it for Passover, and she would give some to all of her neighbors in her condo complex to sort of apologize for the fact that
she was making gefilte fish.
Right. But so she was sitting there, and someone said, Aunt Gloria, how do you make the gefilte fish? And I'm sure this video no longer exists, which is really a shame. But she was like, well, you tell the fishmonger you need whitefish and you need pike. And she went through the whole thing as we're sitting there. And I don't know if I, as, maybe an 8-year-old kid, was like, okay, are we going to eat now?
Right.
And I did not appreciate gefilte fish in 1985.
No.
But, I remember that, and I remember that someone was walking, from the living room and through the kitchen, in your standard, L-shaped living room, dining room.
Yeah.
And, none of us knew how to use a camcorder. We didn't understand the finer...
Sure.
Turning it off when you're moving from one point to another.
No.
10 seconds of the recording is this is linoleum on the kitchen floor. And, it's funny because we know, it's...
Yeah.
That's what it was. But I remember that recording.
Oh, that's amazing. I wonder if your mom rented it at U-Haul. That's where we would rent VCRs when we were, we would rent VCRs and movies originally from U-Haul.
I mean, I can tell you, I don't know the name of the business, but I can see it. It was in the, not even a strip mall, but in the shopping center next to our main grocery store.
Right.
That probably doesn't exist anymore in its current form. That was crazy. One time I was I think this was a seder. I'm pretty sure it was a seder. My cousin and her husband run the Chabad in Brookline, Massachusetts.
Okay.
And so I spent a lot of time with them when I was living in Boston. And I was at this huge seder that they had, and I was in the kitchen doing prep, and I was talking to this woman, and I realized that I didn't know her, but I knew mutual people.
Right.
And sometimes that's comfortable, and sometimes it's a weird dance because we're not sure what to say. And I must have said something. I don't know what I said, but she looked at me and she said, "How did you know that about me?" And right?
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, I went on 2 dates with your brother. That's how I knew this thing about her. I never met her before that night.
I love Jewish geography.
It was just that was this just wild moment. Wild moment.
Oh, that is something else. I went on 2 dates with your brother.
I mean,
Amazing.
well, I guess I didn't lead both seders both of those years in Boston, since clearly I went to my cousin's seder for one of those years.
Oh my gosh. Do you does your family have any what's your traditional meal for breaking Passover? Are you a pizza family, or do you
Neil goes out for pizza.
Neil goes out for pizza?
Yeah. I don't eat dairy, so I can't eat pizza.
Okay.
But yes, pizza for sure. It's what we always broke Passover with.
Yeah.
Definitely. I remember going when I was in college. There was this bar that we'd go to, and we would go there and we'd like watch the clock because we knew like it was funny. Like we weren't observant in terms of like the last 2 days being holiday days, my friend.
Right.
But we knew like, oh, Passover is over at 7:25 p.m.
Uh-huh.
And so we would go and we'd get our seats and everything. And then we were like, we would like the pizza to come out at this time. We cannot have it before.
Is there anything I haven't asked you about Passover that you would be, if we hung up without you saying, you would be sad not to share?
So one of the things I didn't think of when I was making you a list and thinking about tonight was when I was in college, I took this course on storytelling, and I made for one of the projects a storytelling Haggadah. So
Okay.
I was gathering stories from lots of people, from family, from friends, and like, you know, this is the late 90s. This is early internet.
Mm-hmm.
So I was on some listservs. And I got such interesting stories. I learned about, there's this whole story about a group of Civil War soldiers who made a seder, they asked for a couple of days off in, I don't remember where they were, maybe somewhere in Ohio. We have a children's book that's based on the story, but I have an account of it in here. And so I was on, through my high school youth group, I was on different listservs, and I just basically, any group I was in on the internet, like the 3 groups I was in on the internet then, I sent out this request. I was like, oh, I'm looking for stories relating to your family's seder. So this one guy sent me a story about when Alan Tipper Gore came to his family's seder.
Oh.
Okay, so the short version, so this person who sent this to me, his mother wrote this up. And her husband was a rabbi in Nashville, and so they invited their congressman, Al Gore, and his wife, Tipper, to the seder. Mm-hmm. And there were about 35 people there, and it's a lively affair, and the Gores asked lots of questions about what was going on, like that's why you invite like a wide variety of people, Jews and Jews. And then she says, this is written by Donna Glazer. I want to give her credit for what I'm going to read. Finally, the big moment arrived, time for the matzah and horseradish sandwich. Now, you need to understand that the horseradish at our seder is not just the regular bottled variety found in the supermarket. Not for this family. Our horseradish was imported by my parents, who brought it with them from Rochester, New York. It is especially strong, made by a member of the Rochester Jewish community. Customers flocked to him from all over the country. The warning went out. Proceed cautiously with the horseradish. Those who had been with us before watched the congressman heap his matzah with horseradish.
No.
Right? So we all know where this is going. He took a huge...
But Al Gore does not. He does not know where it's going.
He does not. He took a huge bite, nodded, and said, that's not so bad. All of a sudden, his face turned bright red as the horseradish traveled a little higher. He croaked out the word, water. It took 10 minutes before his face got back to normal, and he was able to laugh at himself and we with him. And then, like, he's talking, then, like, the conversation continues, and he's talking about all sorts of different things, and they had a great time, and she ends this by saying, it was a wonderful seder. We were all sad to see it end, even though it was already 1 o'clock in the morning. we hear that whenever Al Gore spoke to Jewish audiences after that memorable seder, he would say, "When I had seder at the rabbi's, he got lots of mileage out of that seder, and so did we." Prescient. Here comes. Who knows? If he becomes president, maybe we'll invite them again. This time he can bring the horseradish. I thought that was very funny. And then years later, I was staffing a teen trip in Washington, D.C.
Mm-hmm.
And this program often used recent college graduates as their staff.
Yeah.
I came with a group of teens from Chicago. They had recent college graduates. So I'm talking to this young man who's there, and he had the same name, the same last name, and he said he was from Nashville. And I said, "Oh, I like wrote up this, I have this funny story that like was included in this Haggadah that I made." And he said, "That's my family's story."
Amazing.
But then I said, "Oh, well, what was it like that night?" He said, "Oh, I wasn't born yet." Like,
oh, what a baby.
It was a very interesting moment, but I like that story. I mean,
It's a great story. I love a Hillel sandwich. I love haroset and horseradish
so
mixed
good.
together. It is my favorite flavor combination of the night.
It is definitely, I would say, the highlight. Did you by chance see the picture I posted this week of my daughter and her eyes bugging out? We were talking about maror. We were talking
Okay.
about horseradish. We listened to this podcast that asked, "Why does hot sauce make your eyes run?" And I was like, "Oh, this is like maror," or "make your nose run," excuse me. Eyes. And as she was listening to it, her eyes got wider and wider. So we've been talking about whether the kids are going to try horseradish this year.
Ooh, that's exciting.
I think they should try a tiny bit.
Yeah.
I don't know that they will, but I'm going to encourage them to try it.
Yeah.
And I'll have the pink one on hand because it's not as harsh as the white one.
Right. Yeah.
Can we talk about haroset? Haroset
Yeah.
is also a huge highlight. It's supposed to represent the mortar of making bricks. And it's the way I was raised. It was apples and nuts and wine and cinnamon. And I was an adult before I discovered that the Sephardi world makes a far superior haroset
Oh, really?
with like dried fruit, dates, apricots, and you put it in a food processor and it makes a really nice paste.
Yeah.
That's not as dry.
Yes.
It's more tangy. Completely superior. I'll make the regular. I shouldn't say regular. I'll make the Ashkenazi one that I was raised with.
Yeah.
But I don't think I have made it the last couple of years because the last couple of years have been tough, and just been us. But I think I might make the Sephardi one again.
Yeah. I often get my haroset as, because I'm doing second night and people are coming from like their family seders. Like a lot of people go to their family, the extended family first night, friend seder second night in my community. So a lot of times I will just ask people to bring leftover haroset from night one.
I mean, you cannot go wrong with that.
And then you can get like a buffet
Yes.
of haroset.
You know, a fun thing to do with leftover haroset, if you have such a thing, which I understand if people don't. Last year, I put some on a piece of salmon.
Ooh, that would be nice.
Like, just simply stuck it on, smushed it over it, and baked it.
Yeah.
It was pretty good.
The one year when I made it myself, I bought pomegranate seeds because I am lazy, and pomegranate juice and apples and like honey and some wine. And so I did like a pomegranate forward haroset that was really nice.
I like that. That sounds really good.
Yeah. Like that Palm Wonderful juice.
Uh-huh.
You know, like you just buy a little bottle of that and then like the pomegranate seeds are right next to it, and then it was, and then cinnamon, and it was a really nice, fun one. Well, Carolyn, this has been so fun. We're both up
Absolutely.
close to our bedtimes.
Yes. Very good.
Do you have anything you want to promote, or do you want people to follow you on the internet?
You can follow me on Instagram. My handle is Caroline ER. So it's CAROLINEER77. I keep trying to change it and not finding something that hasn't been taken. So that's where you can find me on Instagram. And I think I post interesting things about food, smashing the patriarchy,
Yeah.
and dabbling in parenting.
Yeah. And also like Jewish dafyomi sometimes.
Yes, and Jewish.
Well, that you spun off, right?
I did. I spun off for dafyomi, which is a daily Talmud study that I do. So if you would like to follow me on that account is called #dafyomi, and I post about the interesting things that I find in my daily Talmud study. I don't post every day, but I try to post when I find things that are particularly interesting or speak to my heart, or things that I think are known in Jewish culture, and it's like, oh, here's the source. This is where it came from.
Yes.
I like finding those moments and saying that this is it. So yeah, at #dafyomi and at Caroline ER77. I'd be happy to have you, unless you are a bot, because I block those.
Yeah. Down with bots. You can follow me on Instagram at Shy Leah, on Twitter at Chicago Leah, Finding Faves Pod also on Twitter and Instagram. Follow, I think it is now called Following, on Apple Podcasts. Leave 5 stars. All the big podcasts say it really helps, so I say it really helps too.
Absolutely.
It must be true. Well, thank you so much, Caroline. This has been a blast.
It has been so much fun. Thank you. Happy Passover to you. Chag Sameach, which is the way to say it in Hebrew, to everyone who observes the holiday. And for everyone else, I hope you enjoyed my talking about recipes.
It was great.
Thank you for listening to Finding Favorites with Leah Jones. Please make sure to subscribe and drop us a 5-star review on iTunes. Now, go out and enjoy your favorite things.